Yes, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our international live series. My name is AJ, and I'm working as project manager in digital transformation program in Habitat Association. And today's session is about digital learning. It's a topic that gained much more importance, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. So we'll be covering new modalities in digital learning. And I have two guests from Simplon, Camille Hartmann. She is working as International Business Development Manager, and Morgan Martinez. She is working as International Project Manager at Simplon. So welcome on board. How are you and how are things in France?
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for inviting us. Yeah, well, you know, France has been hit particularly hard by the COVID epidemic. We have one of the highest death toll in Europe, with more than 29,000 deaths, and a heavy caseload with more than 150,000 confirmed cases. And in order to limit the spread of the virus and protect the most vulnerable communities, the French government decided to issue a national lockdown in mid-March. So all the public spaces were closed, and we were put in a lockdown for almost 2 months. But since the beginning of May, the situation is getting much better, and we have the feeling that the COVID outbreak has been contained. And now the lockdown measures are gradually being lifted. We can travel freely within France. Public gatherings are reauthorized. And schools and restaurants are starting to reopen. So we are quite confident that it will go out of this crisis and innovate from here.
Yes. Cool. Well, in Turkey, we did not have a serious lockdown as in France. It was a little more laid back. But then we had the partial quarantines during the weekend, so it would be like a total lockdown during the weekends. Mm-hmm. And for the past 2 weeks, the restaurants started to reopen, and now most of the travel restrictions were released. But the cases are still increasing, so people are still quite cautious, and we have still partial restrictions applied in Turkey. And I think recently also we had like wearing a mask became like mandatory outside. So we're still trying to keep things in control. Well, we hope that it's gonna go back to what it was before, hopefully soon. So before we begin, I would actually want to introduce Habitat Association and what we do, especially for the audience who did not have a chance to meet us yet. So Habitat is an NGO working in sustainable development. It's been established in 1997 in Istanbul. And we currently have 4 programs: entrepreneurship, digital transformation, financial literacy, and socioeconomic cohesion. And we have our training content to be disseminated throughout Turkey with our projects. And these are implemented with local and global partners. And during the pandemic, so most of our activities and trainings were face-to-face, and we had to carry all of them online. And we organized 2 hackathons, one for all individuals and one specifically for the high school kids. And the topic was COVID-19 and finding solutions for the problems caused by it. And we also organized various events such as Youth for Goals, and this was for SDGs. And we also organized a digital festival. And now it would be great to know what Simplon does, and it would be great to know what the situation has been for you, especially you're working in different locations. And I'm assuming that would also result in various responses and action plans. So how was the situation for you?
Yeah, so the situation for Simplon really varied by the country in which we were working. I think sort of as we've seen, every country takes a bit of a different approach to keeping COVID under control, and the timelines look different in every place. So we definitely had to adapt our approach by country. Some countries we ended up switching to a remote model very, very early on. Other countries it was a little bit later as their lockdown was more progressive. So again, it sort of depended on the country, but we sort of did run into a few challenges, if you will, in each location. But overall, I think the two biggest concerns we had during the crisis was access to Wi-Fi and access to technological equipment at home. Because our traditional models, we have trainees come to a training center, which we've established in a location, and they have, the Wi-Fi they need, they have the equipment they need, everything's on site. And in some countries, the lockdown was announced more or less overnight. I know in France, we had an announcement, I think at 8 p.m. for a noon lockdown the next day. So there wasn't always time for people to go get the equipment they need to ensure they had a stable Wi-Fi connection at home. So we had to work with a lot of local partners. I'm thinking of in Morocco, for example, we worked with a local partner on site to distribute small portable 4G keys for our teams to use that have a certain amount of credit that allows them to connect to the internet, to work on their project briefs, to discuss with their trainers and their classmates so that our training can continue as close to normal as possible.
Yeah, this situation really shed light a lot, actually more than it used to be, on the digital divide and basically the problems that's been created by it. So, and with the pandemic, we all had to adapt very quickly. So what did Simplon do to respond to the crisis, and what changes you did into your model? Because you also said that you were doing the trainings in person.
Yeah, so we had sort of a 4-pillar response to the crisis. And again, it varied country by country, but in general, we had about a 4-pillar response. The first, and I think the most important response that we had, was doing working groups with the technical teams in order to adapt our curriculum. We did our best to stick to the curriculum we had put into place, but it was the modalities that changed quite a lot. Before we were working in person, and sort of overnight we had to switch to a remote training, which required a lot of different tools to be used, a much different pedagogical approach. We kept our active pedagogy in place, which is one thing we were very, very proud of, but we had to sort of change the method in which we got there. So, for example, we sat down with a lot of the training teams to say, okay, we really want to conduct a certain project brief to allow trainees to master certain skills, but this brief was really designed to have people working side by side together. So how can we adapt this brief to make it easy to conduct sort of in a virtual situation? And so sort of one example we did to achieve that was we broke down our projects into much smaller deliverables. So rather than having the trainee conduct a 2-week to 3-week project in which they're not really getting a lot of feedback in between because they're working remotely, we broke that down into weekly deliverables. So they would turn something into their trainer, and their trainer could see, are you sort of meeting these criteria, these checkpoints we had hoped? And if not, what additional support can we provide you? So that's sort of just one example of what we did, but we worked with each country's training team to decide what works best for you in terms of your current situation and culturally. Some countries, they really needed that extra social interaction, so we could build that into the curriculum as well. Sorry, go ahead. Don't worry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So the second, no worries. So the second pillar, I think it's, but our second sort of pillar that we implemented was the remote training of trainers. So traditionally, we train our trainers during a 5-day on-site sort of intensive boot camp, if you will. And of course, our teams have been grounded, meaning we couldn't leave France, and obviously the teams couldn't travel to us because of sort of international border restrictions. So we had to take what was very much an in-person activity and again, switch it to online. And for us, the training of trainers is super important because it's sort of the core of our methodology. Our trainers are the ones that transmit this methodology to our trainees. So we had to ensure that they still had access to those same tools and would be able to interact with each other during the training of trainer session in the same way they would as in person. So we've had to switch up our modality a bit. Instead of 5 days sort of back to back, we switched to a model where we have 3 days sort of back to back. And then we give the trainers a small break to sort of digest what they've learned, to put some of that into practice. And then we come back 2 days later to do 2 additional days where we complete the training. So after they've had a chance to really digest what they've learned, attempt to put it into action, create some of their own project briefs, we come back and we have our international pedagogical manner complete this training with them and fill in any blanks that might have missed during the first part. So we've had to definitely supplement a lot of group work that we did on site with some new methodologies, but it works pretty good so far. The third sort of pillar that we've introduced is our remote trainee recruitment. So again, something that's on site. We do in-person interviews with group games and activities where they're presenting in person and moving around. It's not possible with the restrictions that are currently in place. So what we've done is we want to stay true to our model because it's something that we know, we've tested, we know it works. So we've recreated our sort of recruitment room setup virtually, using Zoom rooms and breakout rooms so that we have our general common room where our trainees all come together. We can explain to them the recruitment process, then we can still break them down into small breakout rooms to conduct group activities. We use online collaborative tools with them to allow them to create designs and work together while still being socially distanced. So we've done that as well. And then our sort of last major, I think the most important pillar, has been our remote pedagogical support. During the crisis, we understood that a lot of our training centers were, again, overnight switching to this remote model that they may or may not have had training in prior because it's not our traditional model. So what we did is we set up a series of calls. So every single training center had a call with us once a week where we'd sit down with the international pedagogical manager and some pedagogical support staff and brainstorm with them different ideas to sort of keep up the continuity of the training. If they encountered any problems, it was our time to brainstorm together what's the best solution. And those of us that had meetings, for example, if I was working with the Moroccan team and with the team from the DRC, if something in the DRC worked really well, we can share that with Morocco. We can share that with Turkey, for example, or any country we're working with, to sort of help them, get ideas of what is the best way to ensure that our trainees are getting the same experience and are still able to acquire the skills that we'd hope they require with some adapted methodology. So that was sort of our 4-pillar approach. And like I said, every country we adapted a little bit differently, but we were really happy with the way it worked. And we got to try out a lot of new collaborative online tools, a lot of new different ways of working. So we like to think we're stronger because of it.
Yeah, and we have the chance to be working with a community of more than 200 trainers all over the world. So we are operating training programs in Africa, in Europe, in India. And I think that this diversity of pedagogical approach brings many innovations also to solve the challenge of going online through different ways. So it was very challenging, but also a good way to mobilize the community on finding new solutions.
Actually, there's one thing I'm curious about. So you basically converted all the in-person trainings and events online. So I was just wondering, did you get any feedback from the participants about how they feel with this shift, and do they think that it was beneficial or it was efficient? Did you get any kind of feedback?
Yeah, so I work specifically with a lot of the teams in Northern and West Africa. And from those training teams that I spoke to, we definitely had a transition period. I would say the first week or two, everybody was getting adjusted to the new methodologies, trainers and trainees alike, and of course, us at headquarters as well. But overall, we found is that we were able to recreate so much of our sort of in-class experience that after that the initial transition period of getting used to the online tools, having our morning stand-up meetings online, once we got past that that transition, things worked out really, really well. It's been able to sort of use it as a learning experience for trainees and say, this may be the world of tomorrow. No one's really sure what it's going to look like yet. So we've used it as an opportunity to sort of boost our trainees' soft skills, to teach them new ways of collaborating and working together and innovating. on a situation that seems very confining. When we're locked home, it maybe, isn't inspiring our creativity as much as we would be in the classroom, but at the same time, it allows us new ways to reflect on situations. So ultimately, our trainees, they did, appreciate this transition. I think, of course, they miss being in person and, seeing each other and all of that, but we even built in some sort of like, I don't want to say playtime, but like fun activities during the day, because, we don't always think about those small coffee breaks or those little interactions you have with your classmates, which really create the cohesiveness of our group. So we recreated some activities, built in some fun time to make sure that they were still making friends, creating these links between colleagues that ultimately, after the end of the cohort, always end up serving our trainees very well.
Yeah, that was one thing we also had in our mind for the, like, some of our events were lasting longer than like an hour or two. And we always have to be like, find ways to like create those like fun breaks. And I mean, they're really easy to do them in person, but like online, that became really challenging because that was also something we never did. And like, we were discussing among us like, oh, okay, so how we can play this game like online that we usually play in person, and people have so much fun and they get to know each other and stuff. But yeah, that is probably like harder than like organizing a whole event or the program, and like how to keep people engaged and still having fun like in between the sessions. So as far as I know, Simplon's content, the training content, is heavily digital and technology oriented. I would want to ask, did you develop and disseminate like other training content during this period?
So our training content in general is very skills-based and very project approach-based, if you will. So in this case, we didn't necessarily modify too much of the content of our training programs, but we drastically changed our approach to how we did it. We know in certain situations, our trainees were very moved by what was going on in the world. So we would use the same sort of skills. We still had the same skills targeted for our projects, but if our trainees were really inspired, and I know we had some that wanted to create tracking programs, for example, to track the number of COVID cases in their country, we gave them that flexibility to allow them to sort of change the project that was initially planned, as long as they could still use the same skills to reach their end goal. So I will say that our content itself didn't change drastically. It was more so our approach, but we really want to stay true to our project-based approach and to allow trainees to really gain their skills through the use of projects. So that didn't change too much, but we did sort of, keep that flexibility and allow them to respond to the situation at hand.
I think you had some participants that worked on projects that were like AI related and related to the pandemic, right?
Yes, I've been doing an incredible work. We have one of our AI school, which was developed in partnership with Microsoft and a teaching hospital in the east part of France. And in this program, we want to train our trainees to become entry-level machine learning developers specialized in healthcare. And we strongly believe that active learning will enable them to develop these data AI skills. So we encourage them to work on real scenarios and data sets with healthcare professionals. And our trainees are currently working on developing a deep learning solution that uses image recognition of lung X-rays to help diagnose the COVID-19. So it's a very exciting project, and it's led in close cooperation with healthcare professionals from the Nancy Hospital. And we really hope that we will have like a solution by the end of the summer.
And you also, Simplon also did another initiative. This was more focused on the elderly because they were the ones that were deeply affected by the pandemic because they had to face the most strict restrictions and like not going out and not seeing anybody. So could you also tell us a little about the initiative that you started with for the elderly people?
Yeah, so during the COVID crisis, many patients in hospitals and retirement facilities didn't have any device to stay in touch with their loved ones. and they felt really isolated, and they were lacking this social connection with their family. So we decided to launch an initiative to support them during this period by providing them with portable tablets and laptops. So over a few weeks, we mobilized all our partners, and we delivered 14,000 digital tablets to hospitals, retirement homes, health and social structures to ensure the connection between COVID-19 patients and their families. And I think that it had a very positive impact on the patient. They felt very happy to interact with their family, to share also their their feelings about the illness. So it was a very strong and powerful project, and it was held by the Simplon Foundation, and we plan to make this plan last in the next few months, because we know that one of the key barrier for remote learning is the equipment. So we are thinking about how we can amplify this initiative to ensure that all the trainees that we train in our network have access to digital devices to follow their courses.
Cool. So do you have any like a forecast into like when you will be going back to the in-person trainings, or what does the situation for Simplon is looking at this point?
Well, I think that it will depend in each country, but we strongly believe that after the COVID crisis, we will have to innovate and to develop new blended learning formats based on what we learned during the crisis. We know that online tools can be a very powerful way of reaching out communities and maximizing our social impact. So we want to explore all the different blended learning formats to see how we could combine distance learning with face-to-face learning to make sure that we deliver the best learning experience possible for the trainees.
Thank you. I'm just going to check real quickly if we have any questions from the audience. Oh, okay. Somebody wanted to ask about the Simplon and Microsoft partnership, but he also said that it has been answered. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions if you have any. So feel free to comment underneath the comment section. But for now, maybe we can talk a little more about the AI school that you're implementing in Paris. So just to elaborate on the question.
So we've been partnering with Microsoft since 2016, and we co-designed a data AI program to support people facing unemployment, develop data AI skills, and become entry-level data experts. We know that the AI sector is booming in many countries, and we really want to expand this data AI program in different locations. So far, we have trained 300 students in France, and we have 12 AI schools across different locations. And the idea is really to work very closely with data AI companies and with the public institutions to offer the best learning experience to the students, to allow them to work on real use cases, to use real data sets, and then to transition into the workplace. So it's a very innovative program, and at the end of the training program, we have around 90% of positive outcomes. So people either found a job or developed their own business activities at the end.
I
Still elaborate if you have any more questions regarding the program, of course.
We do have one more. So here's the question. Is there any possibility to disseminate the tech trainings with Simplon and Habitat Partnership in different countries?
Yeah, we'd love to. Actually, our goal is really to train young people or people facing unemployment on digital skills. And to do that, we rely on local partners to develop active learning programs in different locations. So yeah, if there is a need of data AI talents, so we'd be more than happy to explore the possibilities of such a program in Turkey.
Well, that's definitely good news for on our side. It would be very nice to implement such a project in Turkey and also in different countries, because AI is definitely going to be like popular, I think, for quite a while in the future.
Yeah, yes.
So oh yeah, we got a thanks for the elaborative answer. I think this is all the questions we have. So thank you so much for joining us, for being our guest. It was definitely very interesting to hear another approach, especially coming from France. As you mentioned at the very beginning, France faced like serious lockdowns and serious quarantines, and it definitely means so much to like hear from your experience, especially for an NGO that is implementing the work in person. So this was also like a big change for you. So it was definitely very beneficial to hear about your work and your new approach and your new modalities. So thank you again so much for being my guest, and I hope we'll do another one and hopefully to discuss the updates on the situation and hopefully to introduce much new models. So thank you very much again, and I wish you a nice weekend.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure.